Welcome to Garden-Wise Adventures. My name is Malie and I live in Utah Zone 6/7. And today we're going to go around my property and assess the damage that happened yesterday in our storm. We had 50 to 60 mile an hour winds. There might have been some gusts that were higher. And then last night we hit 37 degrees. Now this is mid-June. I think it's actually might even be June 20th. I can't remember. But anyway, it got really cold. It got extremely windy. I was only able to do a video of a small part of it, and I'll show you that a little bit later in the video because I was doing a garden tour. And surprisingly, a bunch of people showed up in the middle of the storm, which I thought was amazing. So anyway, let's look through the property. This is the first time I'm looking at a lot of the damage, and we'll see what happened. So you can see on our street, I don't see any large branches that have come down on anybody's trees. I do know my neighbor lost a few branches over here on their tree, but they did pretty good. I've heard there's a lot of people in our area that lost trees in this storm. Does look like I may need to prop up my lily. Hopefully it didn't break at the base. Oh, I lost two actually. Yep, we've got both the lilies down. I'll prop them up and see if they continue to grow. I don't know if they broke at the base, but surprisingly, everything else on this side looks pretty good. The rest of the lilies are good. Most of these are low-growing plants, and they did great. This side was protected from the wind. It was coming in from the north. This is the south side of my property. So these look okay. The rest of my property, except for one plant that I'll show you in just a minute, and I'll actually show you the video of that, everything else here looks pretty good. The wind was really strong, but I have low-growing plants with soft stems, so they just kind of bent over in the wind. Now this poor little tree right here, this is my pawpaw tree, and I'd say I had 20 to 30 fruit on it before the storm started. And maybe I have one or two, and maybe I don't even have one or two left. It looks like, yeah, I think every single last pawpaw was stripped off this tree. I'm not seeing any. So that is highly disappointing, really sad. I love pawpaws, and to go from 20 to 2. Let's see if you can see this. Yeah, 20 pawpaws to 2. Maybe there's a couple more hidden in here. But the big ones are off. That's really sad. Now, the part that scared me the most was my medlar tree. And I'll show you a video of what it looked like in the storm. This medlar tree is broken at the base, I think. We will probably be able to prop it back up. I am going to call Dan Owen, who's an arborist, and see if I can get him over here to walk through assessing the tree. I think we're going to need to stake it back up. It's really, really heavy. I don't know how we're going to prop it back up, but I think with his help we might be able to do it. Let's go show you around the base of it. Now I don't know if you can see the cracks in the earth right there. So every time the wind would blow, the tree would lay down really heavily, and the ground around the tree would heave. It would heave up a huge amount. But none of the roots snapped, I don't think. But we do need to prop it back up and stake it again, and possibly thin out the canopy. Because I think the canopy was the big issue. We're going to have Dan Owen go through and talk about that and see if maybe thinning out the canopy would help. Now, even though the windstorm was strong enough to blow over my tree, this little green stalk right here stood firm. It had the heaviest gusts were hitting it, and it didn't even topple. The plants inside it are fine. Let's see if we can turn it here a little bit. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. I'm really happy about that. We did lose my one Breba fig off my fig. It got stripped off, but the leaves held strong. They didn't get shredded. And then these poor little green stalks, they didn't move, but everything in them well, not everything, but I lost a big plant here, but luckily it's growing back. It looked like this one. It snapped at the base. The wind dehydrated and ripped apart the leaves on my peppers. I think I lost almost all of my beans. This side was the most protected from the winds, so it got a little bit of damage, but it wasn't as bad as the other side. So yeah, it just pretty much stripped the side bare. This one seemed to fare a little bit more. Stripped off the leaves, but we've got new growth that was already coming, so hopefully these will recover. I don't think I've looked at the back on this. Yeah, I think it's going to be okay. We did lose. I did snap one of my tomatoes. Snapped it off down there. I've already taken the top off, but we've got new growth coming from the base, so that should be okay. These are my dwarf tomatoes that I'm just growing in pots. And then we've got another little dwarf tomato here. Peppers did really well. I put them down on the ground in a more protected spot so they didn't get broken or anything. But I think we've lost all of my little seedlings here. They all snapped. They got whipped around and snapped, except for these. These are my squash seedlings. I really don't need them. They're just replacements. The tomatoes that I have in pots that should have been planted a long time ago, I just don't have a spot for them. They did okay too. And then it stripped a lot of leaves off my feijoa. This is a pineapple guava, but we do have new growth coming on, so hopefully it'll be okay. Now this is the south side of my property, protected from the wind, but this is the area that got to 37 degrees. Now the damage that I'm expecting to see, 37 degrees is not enough to kill the tomatoes or the basil, but I'm expecting to likely see damage on the fruit later. Once these start forming fruit, especially these blossoms right here, with cold like that, we could possibly start seeing some blossom end rot. Blossom end rot is a result of stress damage, which makes the tomatoes unable to utilize the calcium that they do have in the soil. So I'm hoping we don't get too many with blossom end rot over here. So we'll see how this goes. The Jerusalem artichokes got a lot of wind damage. This is the wind blowing and dehydrating them, breaking them up. This is not cold damage. These were really heavily wilted during the storm. They just could not keep up with the winds, and the dry winds. So this is a lot of wind damage, but they'll be fine. Jerusalem artichokes are not a problem. This kind of damage, they're just going to shrug off. Tomatoes here, I feel the same way. We'll probably see some blossom end rot, but they're staked really tightly to their poles, so there was no wind damage breaking them. My little melons were all protected. I don't see any cold damage on these. These are the topaz melons. I'm really excited about these. I was worried about my squash breaking because they were whipping all over in the wind, but they seem okay. Squash here got hit with a lot of wind. The only damage I see is this one, and that's not bad at all. These are center cut squash. The beans got a little bit of wind damage there too, but I think they're going to be okay. This one may have broken. Yeah, this one broke down here. So that one's gone. But I think we have enough beans that survived that we should be okay. Sweet potatoes did fine, as did the tomatillos. Now this area I'm really happy with. This fence right here is on the north side. It acts as a wind block, and it didn't let the wind touch my peppers or any of the other plants through here. As we were walking up here, as the tour people were walking up here to look at things, they weren't getting their heads were getting buffeted by the wind because their heads are above the wind. But everything else was doing really well. Probably do need to go through and water. Although the wind did tear out my, I'll have to toss this in the compost. This is a coriander that did get ripped out of the ground. Oh, and the rest of my coriander kind of got ripped out of the ground too. So we'll put those in the compost and see if we can let one or two reseed themselves. Garlic is ready to harvest. Onions got whipped around a bit. And then it looks like we lost several peaches. So that kind of helped thin my peach tree. Let's see if there's any broken branches here. I try to prune my peach tree for strength. And a lot of times when you get wind damage like this, sometimes you'll get torsion breaks where the heavy branches will twist and then they'll split in the middle. But I'm not seeing any of that on these. I still see some fruit in the trees, so we're good there. We have cherries on the ground, but the cherries are just about ripe and they stayed in the tree. I'm really happy about that. The only thing that we had breaking, oh, and I'm not happy about this. We don't ever get a ton of plums on this tree, but it looks like we've got quite a few on the ground. So I hope we have any left in the tree, although I see two right here. So we at least have 2 plums left. We should be okay. Now the only damage I'm seeing that I really need to clean up is this is a giant privet hedge. I've never pruned these privets. My house was built in 1996, 1997, and I think these were planted at that time. And I don't think anybody's ever pruned them. I leave them tall so that they can make kind of a privacy screen for my house. But we've got one large branch that I need to clean up, and that is it. So I say we got pretty lucky. That was a pretty bad storm. I am really worried about some of the other people in our area. Hopefully people didn't lose too much in that storm. But I think we got really lucky. Just lost a little bit of fruit. We've got a tree that thought it was going to go down, but I think that one can be saved, and then just one large branch to clean up. So I feel like I dodged a bullet with that storm. And if you're in this area, if you're in the area that I live in Utah County, I hope you guys are okay. I hope you didn't have too much storm damage. If you did, I'd like to hear about what happened down below, and hopefully the rest of your gardens are doing okay. And if this video has been helpful to you, I hope you like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and have a wonderful day.